Welcome to the video lecture series, Culture, Worldview, and Origins. We're Tim and Holly Nyquist. This series, we're focusing on culture and how culture influences the educational process, how culture influences the thinking processes. And that's what we're focusing on, is the cognitive domain of culture, and how culture forms and causes us to develop and to think in certain ways, not just what to think, but actually how to think. This is the fifth lecture on the series of culture. And today what we're going to, I'll go over the previous ones, is that number one was the universal domains, how we divide the world up into supernatural, natural, or creator, created. Then matter and spirit, what do we do with them? Do we keep them separate, or in what order do we put them in? Spirit and matter, matter and spirit, and is there any influence over those two? The third one is the operating system. What system do we operate by? Our system, is it closed or is it an open system? Number four is the locus of authority. Where is our locus of authority? Is it internal or external? Do I have the power, I have the authority, the permission to make decisions and to be responsible, or do I not? The authority structure, number five, is how that develops my character. What do I look like? What kind of structure is that? Am I autonomous? Am I competitive? Am I submissive? Am I cooperative? Space, number six. Space has to do with my space, 3 feet, 4 feet, 6 feet, 8 feet, personal space when we're navigating in society, versus no space, versus common space. Time, kairos or chronos. What time do we function on? My culture functioned on chronos. Chronology. It was very time orientated, whereas other cultures are kairos, which is very event orientated, and time does not control the event. Type of cognitive processing type. What type of processing do different cultures use as a tendency? So that would be either the auditory processing mode or the visual processing mode. Then that lends to a type of logic. What kind of logic do I possess, or do I use? Is it a linear sequential logic, which is based on auditory processing, or do I use block logic, which is an image-based? Location of thought. Number 10. Where is my thought location? Is it internal or is it external? And if it's auditory, it's internal, and if it's visual based, then it's visually out there. It's an external location of thought. Type of thought orientation. If it's internal, my thinking is not based on experience necessarily of what I've already had. It can project into the future hypothetically, and so a lot of my thinking processes are into the future, whereas an external, visually based, has a thought process that is based on what has been experienced, and which is history. And so they are very in tune with history and conserving that history process. And then the product of thought processing, number 12. What is the product of that kind of thinking? And the thinking of one is producing, and the part of the other one is reproducing something very, very well. So now number 13. We're heading into number 13. You're gonna say, where'd you come up with this one? Well, I'll tell you. Use of words in language. You think, well, that's kind of an odd topic. Well, yeah, it can be. Use of words in language. The Western tendency is denotative, which means precise, objective, black and white in using adjectives to describe. This side, the use of words in language, is more connotative. What do you mean by that? It's more general, subjective, colorful, and action-orientated. It uses a lot of verbs. Okay, so how is this a problem? Well, in your homework assignments, what do you want them to do? If you want them to be precise, and you want them to describe a process, and you want them to do that, and you get papers that seemingly are beating around the bush, that are 5 pages long, that could be condensed into half a page or 1 page, That's connotative. That is the type of writing that is produced. Now, I was a student. I was a student that had to produce writing assignments. I didn't do very well. And do you know what I was criticized for? Lack of color, lack of visuals, lack of imagination. All right. How was the content? Well, the content was fine, but it was just, it was very drab. Okay, so I had to fight to rewrite something to make it colorful, which didn't come easy, as you can tell through this presentation. I'm just a black and white guy. So anyway, use of adjectives, where on this side it's verbs. If you were to ask, sorry, I don't have the object. I should have an object. A pencil. And I asked a Westerner to describe this pencil. It would be described in adjectives. It would be described as, well, it's approximately 5.5 inches long. It has a number 2 lead in it that signifies it's the durability, or how hard the lead is, and it is yellow. That would be more of a Western description. That pencil on this side would be described as, oh, that's for writing, and that's for drawing, that's for, so in other words, it's a purpose. Where on our side, it's just kind of, doesn't have to have a purpose or an action. It's just, this is what it is. It's this. So, okay, 14. Tendency of personalities. Western tendency tend to be very precise, progressive, private, and skeptical. Okay? My friends, they were colorful. They were conservative. They were community-based, and most of them were believers in something. They believed what you told them. They believed and went to church. They believed, whereas on my side, the personality is we're very precise. Get to the point. Just the facts, ma'am, just the facts. Get to the point. We're progressive. We're always reaching out to do things a little bit differently, a little bit better next time, which means we leave behind what we did this last time, which means we're not cyclical. We don't repeat customs a lot. A non-Western culture is almost like sometimes going back in time. It's conservative. Where mine is private and I'm skeptical. Okay. Number 15, categories of thought. Categories meaning how do we divide our thought is kind of almost how we divide our universe. Natural, supernatural, how we divide spirit and matter is how we divide our thought processing or our actions, our work is secular and sacred. In between the secular and sacred, there's those 2 bars again, which means that there is not really, you don't touch. You don't touch the secular with the sacred. And based on that thinking, that was Michelangelo's picture of the creation of man, where there's a spark of divinity leaping from God's finger to man. And why? Well, because in the Western thought process, the secular or the worldly and the material are separate from the sacred, and you don't mix them. You keep them apart, and they're 2 different domains. So therefore, we have church and state. But the operation of the church, or the operation of the state, does that follow any guidelines or rules that might be instituted by the church? On this side, it's not secular sacred, it's sacred first, and then the secular world, and there's two dots, meaning that there is no division. It's fluid again between those two areas. They're not different domains, they're the same thing. Now, this is what I learned the first year or two in Bolivia. If you want an interesting video clip, you can go and look on YouTube or something for the world's most dangerous road. And look for the one, it's in Bolivia. And that's the one I traversed for 5 years. It is, the road's not that dangerous. It's the other drivers. But it's just a narrow road with not much margin for error. And so how did I learn this sacred secular? Well, we climbed from the city of La Paz, which was already kind of high at 10 to 12,000 foot elevation. We climbed to 17,000 in the car. It's a highway. We climbed to 17,000, hit the summit, and then we would drop down going through Death Road at down to 1,500 foot in the Coroico in the valley. And I didn't understand is that road is dangerous, and I knew that. And because that road was the main transport of hauling goods out of the Amazon basin, out of everything. So there was semis, bobtails. They weren't pulling trailers. Trailers wouldn't make it, but there were bobtail semi-trucks, mostly Volvos, coming up out of there and going down into there on a road that was barely wide enough for one car. And so that's where the difficulties would come in. But when we were climbing up to the top, there was asphalt, and it was a 2-lane highway up to the top of the summit. And I had a small car at that time. It was a 4-cylinder Trooper. And I had to keep that thing wound up to make it to the summit. Otherwise, it would die. And there was all these trucks that were slowing up and making a caravan, but they were going really slow, and I didn't want to lose my speed, and there was nobody coming down the other way, and so I got out and I passed them. I start passing them. And I get to the summit, and it's like it's raining, but there's no clouds in the sky, and it's raining, and I'm kind of like, what is this? And I put on my wipers, wiping it off. It was beer. From what? The truck drivers were chayando. They were spilling beer out to Mother Earth and asking for a blessing as they continue their trip over the summit and into the Amazon Valley. They were mixing their sacred with their secular. They're secular drivers, but they were asking permission and safety to go on their trip. And the whole lot of them was doing that. Professional men, drivers, and they're out there spilling their beer out on the pavement and that asking a blessing. Libation. I didn't understand. I went around them because I was going to lose my velocity, and instead I get doused in beer. I didn't understand. Okay? Now I understand a little bit. A little bit better. Those are the 3 points for today. We're going to keep developing. We got more videos to come. I hope you join us. Thank you for joining me today. Again, we're Tim and Holly Nyquist. You can find us at Double Road Rover. That's the Double Road Thinking, Double Road Culture in the Land Rover. And then at THN, Tim and Holly Nyquist. thn.academia@gmail.com. Thank you again for joining me.